A sound echoed from the upper observation tiers, a noise so utterly out of place it silenced the hushed murmurs of the alien cadets. It was laughter. A spark of disbelief that rippled through the amphitheater, a place where solemnity was the only acceptable tribute. This was the apex unleashing, the brutal culmination of 2 grueling years at the Interstellar Combat Academy, where the galaxy's most lethal living weapons were tested against one another. It was a ceremony of blood, honor, and survival. No one had ever dared to take it lightly. Until now. The girl in the training pit seemed an unremarkable instrument of such heresy. Her dark hair pulled into a simple braid, her standard-issue combat harness hanging a little too loose on her frame. But her posture was all wrong. There was no tension, no primal fear. The floor had just yawned open, delivering a nightmare from the chasm below. A hulking quadrupedal predator, Voro Prime, rose into the harsh light, its adaptive plating shimmering in jagged camouflaging pulses. Teeth like curved bone sabers dripped with a chemical saliva that hissed and ate tiny scars into the metal floor. The announcer's mandibles had barely finished clicking out its name before the human girl, Cadet Mara Ashlyn, offered it a relaxed, almost unnerving smile. This creature was a relic of war, engineered over centuries for a single brutal purpose: to hunt and eradicate sentient life. It could shred alloy hulls and track a scent through the vacuum of space. It had ended the promising careers of dozens of cadets. And yet Mara stood there as if she'd just been introduced to someone's slightly unkempt, oversized pet. She rolled her shoulders, a casual motion for a light jog, not a death match. A symphony of alien murmurs filled the stands. The instructors watched, stone-faced, though one reptilian commander allowed a flick of his tongue, a silent scoff of pure contempt. Voro Prime's gaze locked onto its prey, its plated back arching, its tail slicing the air with a low, ominous vibration that could be felt in the very bones of the spectators. It took one deliberate, earth-shaking step toward her, its claws sinking craters into the reinforced floor. Mara simply tilted her head. "So," she said, her voice clear and carrying in the tense hush, "you're their best?" She took a single, defiant step forward. A collective tension seized the stands, and that's when Voro Prime moved. It was liquid violence, a blur of motion that closed half the distance in less than a second. Mara didn't flinch. She didn't even brace. She just grinned, mine's bigger. The words hung in the air for a stunned heartbeat. Then she lifted 2 fingers to her lips and unleashed a piercing whistle that cut through the arena's tension like a shard of glass. The sound was physically painful to her alien peers, who winced and flattened their auditory membranes. Suddenly, the arena's lighting flickered and shifted as the massive secondary gates on the far side of the pit groaned open with a sound of protesting metal. From the darkness within rolled a deep, resonant growl that felt ancient and utterly feral, a sound that had never been logged in any Academy database. This was not a sanctioned specimen. Every being in the amphitheater leaned forward, a single entity held in rapt suspense, and then it emerged. First a massive scarred paw, then a broad, powerful head with eyes that burned like molten gold. This was not engineered perfection. This was something else entirely. This was raw, primal presence. A living testament from a world most had only seen on star charts. Startled glances were exchanged among the instructors. "Is that from Earth?" someone whispered, the word itself sounding like a myth. The colossal beast padded forward with a slow, heavy certainty that spoke of absolute power until it stood at Mara's side, its head level with her chest, a loyal shadow forged from pure, untamed instinct. Here, on Wrapped Sci-Fi, the hunt was about to be redefined. She didn't command it. She communed with it. Her hand rested casually against the thick, coarse fur of its neck, her fingers curling into the mantle of a living legend. The beast's breath plumed in the cool arena air, a stark organic contrast to the sterile hum of technology. Across from them, Voro Prime's adaptive plating flickered in a confused, stuttering rhythm, its programmed aggression faltering in the face of this unknown variable. It took a slow, uncertain step backward, The silence in the amphitheater was so profound that the low hum of the lighting rigs sounded like a thunderous orchestra. Mara lifted her gaze, her eyes scanning the stunned faces in the observation tiers, instructors and cadets alike frozen in pure disbelief. "You said this was an unleashing, right?" she called out, her tone deceptively conversational, as if discussing the weather. "Then let's make it fair." Up in the announcer's booth, the insectoid's mandibles clicked in a rapid, involuntary stutter of pure confusion. This was against every academy protocol. Cadets did not bring their own monsters to the final exam, and yet, the arena's own systems had accepted the beast. The gates, rumbling open at her signal. It was in the database, somewhere. 40 Prime, its programming reasserting itself, let out a sudden, deafening roar, a sound designed to shatter nerves and liquefy resolve. It reverberated off the high walls, a declaration of dominance. Mara's beast didn't roar back. It didn't need to. It simply stared, its immense muscles coiling like power conduits beneath its scarred hide, and lowered its head, a fractional, terrifying dip that was the universal language of a predator about to strike. Mara's smile returned, a knowing curve of her lips that whispered of secrets no one else in this star system possessed. In the stands, a worried whisper cut through the silence. "She's going to get both of them killed." But the doubt was spreading, infecting the crowd. 40 Prime did not retreat, but its furious charge slowed into a cautious stalking prowl, the way it would approach a genuinely dangerous prey on some alien savanna. Its tail moved in slow, calculating arcs, claws flexing against the alloy floor. The human girl remained a statue of calm, her one hand a constant grounding connection to the titan of fur and muscle beside her. The great beast inhaled through flared nostrils, a low, resonant vibration starting deep within its chest. It wasn't a growl of warning. It was a sound of appraisal, a deep and ancient interest in the metallic morsel before it. For the alien, cadets watching, this was no longer a simple test of strength. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, and the human was rewriting the textbook in real time. "Stay," Mara murmured, her voice so low it was less a sound and more a thought, felt rather than heard. The beast beside her froze, every ounce of its immense power held in perfect, terrifying check, its molten gold eyes locked on the shifting, chromatic plates of its opponent. 40 Prime made its move. It feinted left, then right, its motion a blurring zigzag designed to short-circuit any predator's tracking instincts. It lunged with jaws agape, aiming not for the beast, but for Mara's exposed flank. But she was already moving, not away in panic, but toward the attack, her body angling with a dancer's grace to let the killing blow pass through empty air. As she pivoted, her right hand tapped the furred shoulder of her companion. That single, fleeting contact was the only signal it needed. The beast leapt. It didn't move with the engineered, efficient precision of 40 Prime. It moved with the raw, unforgiving force of nature itself. A tsunami of muscle and claw that slammed into Voro's side mid-lunge. The impact was seismic, a sickening crash, of flesh against metal-plated biology that made the very floor tremble. The sound that followed was a horrific symphony of scraping alloy and tearing composite flesh. The crowd erupted. A cacophony of layered voices, clicks, growls, and shocked trills in a dozen languages filled the air. Mara didn't rush in. She simply stepped back, her analytical gaze coolly scanning the brutal ballet, watching as her companion drove the Academy's finest weapon toward the wall. 40 Prime's plating rippled in frantic, desperate color shifts, its systems trying and failing to compute an opponent that fought on pure, brutal instinct. Mara's beast was relentless, a force of pure pressure, its movements cutting off every angle of retreat. A vicious swipe from Voro's tail caught it across the shoulder, a blow heavy enough to make the larger animal's head snap sideways. Blood welled up, dark against its fur, but the pain only seemed to sharpen its focus, to deepen its terrifying silence. "Good," Mara said softly, as if approving a student's correct form in a training exercise. High above, an instructor leaned, Toward his feathered colleague, his voice a hushed tremor. "That is not standard Earth stock. What is that thing?" The other, a stocky avian with patterned plumage, could only reply, "If I had to guess, an apex predator from a high-gravity death world. But stars above, how did she get it cleared?" Neither had an answer. Down in the pit, Voro Prime twisted, in a sudden, desperate spin, its tail lashing out low. This time, the blow caught Mara's beast across its hind legs, forcing it into a stumbling crouch. Seizing the opening, the alien predator lunged for the kill, its jaws aiming for the vulnerable neck. But the Earth creature rolled with the impact, twisting in mid-fall with an agility that defied its mass, and when it landed, it came up with teeth snapping for Voro's exposed forelimb. The crunch of impact forced Voro to recoil with a sharp, pained shriek, and it was then that Mara took a single step forward, her voice cutting through the din with a short, sharp command she had not used before. Instantly, the beast disengaged, breaking off its attack to pad back to her side, leaving a trail of crimson on the floor. Voro Prime hesitated, its systems glitching on this new data point, an opponent that chose to withdraw from the brink of victory. "You're not the only one who can forge an apex predator," Mara called out, her voice ringing with a chilling confidence that soared up to the stunned observers. A few cadets let out nervous, disbelieving laughs. The rest could only stare, their understanding of combat and companionship being rewritten before their eyes. The insectoid announcer's mandibles clicked in a frantic, agitated pattern, communicating directly with the arena's core systems. Above, the lighting shifted into a colder, more clinical spectrum, and the floor panels beneath Mara's feet began to hum with a new, aggressive energy. A synthesized voice boomed through the amphitheater. "Combat assessment is incomplete. Engage or yield." Mara didn't even blink. Engage. Transformed by the first brutal exchange, Voro Prime now circled with a hunter's calculated patience, its initial arrogance replaced by a cold, scanning analysis for any weakness. Mara's beast mirrored its every step, a low, rumbling growl vibrating. In its chest, its powerful muscles coiled like springs. But now Mara was no longer a spectator. She moved in perfect sync with her companion, a fluid part of a deadly formation. Together, they advanced, their alternating steps a silent, relentless pressure that forced Voro to split its focus, its head swiveling nervously between the human and the titan of tooth and claw. Mara made a sudden, slight feint, a shift of her weight that was pure deception. It was enough. Voro's programming latched onto the movement and it lunged for her, jaws snapping shut on empty air. And in that half-second of committed attack, the Earth Predator struck like a thunderbolt, driving its full weight into Voro's side and smashing it against the arena wall with a deafening clang of metal and bone. The crowd's roar wasn't one of bloodlust but of sheer, unadulterated awe. They were witnessing something the Academy had never conceived. Not a master and a weapon, but a partnership. A single consciousness split between two bodies, moving with a harmony that defied all known combat doctrine. High above, the command staff exchanged silent, grave glances. This wasn't in the handbook. This wasn't supposed to be possible. And, yet in the pit below, a human girl was making it look effortless. The clash intensified, each exchange faster and more brutal than the last. Voro Prime was adapting, its systems whirring, shifting its attack patterns to counter the beast's raw ferocity and Mara's uncanny positioning. But a new element had entered its movements, a flicker of doubt, a micro-hesitation before committing to a strike. And Mara, her eyes missing nothing, saw that crack in its armor and knew exactly how to exploit it. She saw the opening a heartbeat before anyone else. As Voro Prime shifted its weight to pivot away from the hulking beast, it exposed, for a single, critical instant, the less armored joint where its forelimb met its chest plating. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her companion launched at the perfect moment, its powerful jaws closing around the vulnerable gap with a sickening, bone-cracking crunch. Voro Prime's roar was a shriek of pure, unadulterated rage as it tried to wrench itself free. But the golden-eyed beast held fast, a monument of primal power, its muscles standing out in stark relief under its matted fur. And then Mara moved, in. Not to strike a blow, but to place a single deliberate hand on the thick ridge of her companion's shoulder. At her touch, the beast adjusted its grip with terrifying intelligence, using its immense leverage to pull Voro sideways, off balance, into an awkward, stumbling fall that carried it several meters from the wall. The arena erupted. This was no longer a brawl. It was a symphony of violence, and Mara was the conductor. Even the most stoic instructors were on their feet, leaning over the rails. Voro Prime planted its hind claws and twisted with a final desperate surge of strength, throwing the larger predator off. It hit the ground hard but rolled to its feet in one fluid motion, hackles raised high. A deep angry scratch now marred its flank where a sharp edge of Voro's plating had caught it, dark blood welling to the surface. Mara's eyes flicked to the wound, but she didn't call a retreat. Instead, she stepped laterally, a strategic move that forced the injured Voro to track both of them in its compromised field of view. The alien predator's adaptive plates shimmered in frantic, restless color bands, a visible manifestation of its system's overloading. Its breathing was faster now, shallower. It was calculating, reassessing, but so was Mara. In a last gambit-driven move, Voro lunged again, this time ignoring the beast entirely to come straight for her. The move drew a unified gasp from the entire amphitheater. Every cadet knew an unarmored human was a breath away from obliteration against a full-force charge. But Mara's expression remained an unreadable mask of calm. She took 2 rapid, sidestepping paces to her right, and as Voro committed everything to its killing charge, her beast was already in motion from the left. The collision was a masterpiece of timing, mass meeting momentum in a devastating impact that threw the alien predator completely off its path. It skidded wildly across the arena, its claws tearing deep gouges into the alloy floor, its plating flashing through a chaotic, short-circuiting riot of camouflage patterns. Into the sudden, breathless silence, Mara's voice came low and firm as iron. "Hold it." Her companion lunged, but this was no wild, snapping attack. It was a calculated, crushing maneuver, planting its immense weight squarely across Voro Prime's shoulders, driving the alien predator down into the unforgiving alloy floor. The 2 titans writhed in a storm of clashing claws and gnashing teeth, a symphony of raw, brutal power. But for the first time, Voro Prime's roars carried a new, unmistakable edge, not of rage but of strain. High above, the insectoid announcer hesitated, its multiple eyes darting between the brutal spectacle and its control panel. The arena's safety protocols were never designed for this. They were meant for cadets against creatures, not for a duel of apexes. And yet, technically, the human was still engaging through a registered partner. No formal yield had been called. "Why isn't she ending it?" a cadet muttered, voice tight with tension. From nearby, an older, wiser voice replied, "She's proving something. The question is, to whom?" With a final, violent buck, Voro Prime managed to throw the beast clear. Both combatants circled again, slower now, their powerful bodies heaving, muscles bunching under matted fur and shimmering plating. Mara paced in perfect sync with her companion, her gaze locked on the alien predator. She could see the fatigue setting in, but she knew better than anyone that a cornered apex is at its most dangerous. Its final strength is its most desperate. She raised her hand, a slight, almost imperceptible gesture. Instantly her beast froze mid-step, its tail dropping low. Sensing the lull, Voro Prime crept forward, wary and battered, but still driven by its core programming to hunt, to find a way to reclaim the fight. And that was when Mara made her move. She advanced alone, her empty hands held visible at her sides, every step measured and calm. The alien predator's head lowered, a fresh snarl rippling from its scarred jaws. The spectators shifted as one, a wave of uncertainty. Was this supreme bravery or utter madness? 2 meters from Voro, she stopped. "Now!" The command was a soft exhale. From the blind side, her golden-eyed companion moved faster than any eye could track, slamming into Voro's flank with the force of a meteor. The impact drove the creature to its knees, and Mara was already there, stepping into the space above its bowed head. She placed her palm flat between its eyes, not to strike, but to hold, to claim. For a single, breathless heartbeat, the arena fell into a silence so absolute it was deafening. Voro Prime's ragged breathing slowed, its thrashing tail stilled. Mara's beast stood rigid at its side, its teeth mere inches from the exposed, vulnerable neck. The arena's control systems finally registered the posture, a perfect, undeniable containment hold. A soft, definitive tone echoed through the amphitheater. Combat threshold reached. Engagement paused. The spectators erupted. A chaotic wave of disbelief and exhilaration crashed through the tiers. Instructors spoke rapidly into comms, their voices a hushed, urgent buzz. The announcer's mandibles clicked uncertainly before it finally declared, "Assessment ongoing." Mara stepped back, her eyes never leaving Voro. Her companion mirrored her, retreating just enough to grant the alien predator space to rise. It did, so slowly, shaking its massive body, its adaptive plating flickering before settling into a steady, subdued pattern. It glanced at Mara, then at the beast beside her, and for the first time since it had emerged from the chasm, it did not advance. Somewhere in the tiers above, a cadet whispered the truth that was dawning on everyone. She made it hesitate. The pause stretched, the crowd's energy shifting from excitement to a restless electric buzz. Voro Prime's sides heaved, its gaze darting between the human and her companion. Mara stood poised, every fiber of her being ready. She could feel the coiled tension in her beast, the subtle shift of its weight from paw to paw, waiting for her. Cue. The insectoid announcer flicked its antenna toward the control deck. Final engagement phase. Cadet or opponent must yield. The arena's lights brightened to a blinding intensity, casting everything into sharp, unforgiving relief. The hum of the energy barrier surrounding the pit deepened into a thrumming wall of sound, signaling full containment. Voro Prime gave a sudden, deep-chested growl, lowering itself into a final hunter's crouch, its tail sweeping in slow, deadly arcs. Mara knew that sound. It was the predator's decision. This would not end by submission. "Stay with me," she murmured. Her companion's ears twitched backward to catch her voice, though its molten eyes never left its rival. The alien predator sprang. There was no feint this time, just a straight, explosive rush meant to end the fight in a single, devastating blow. Mara sidestepped, her movement pulling the beast with her in a tight, pivoting dance that let Voro's bulk pass so close, she felt the wind of its passage. Her companion lunged at its flank, claws raking along the seam between plating and flesh. Voro twisted mid-stride, jaws snapping to catch the attack. But Mara was already moving again. They pressed in from different angles, a pincer movement of perfect harmony forcing it to spin, to never find its balance. The crowd's roar was a living thing. Even the stone-faced instructors were on their feet. In a blur of motion, Voro slammed, its tail low, a sweeping strike that caught both Mara and her beast, sending them tumbling. Mara hit the ground and rolled, her training absorbing the impact. Her companion scrambled, catching itself with a low, furious growl. Voro charged the beast, claws extended for a crushing pin. Mara didn't think. She acted. She sprinted forward, planting both hands on her companion's shoulder and using its solid mass as a springboard to vault over its back. Her boots connected with Voro Prime's plated head, the impact jarring its strike just enough for her beast to twist free. The alien predator snapped its head upward, throwing her into the air, but she had already grabbed a ridge of its plating. She landed hard, straddling its neck, gripping tight as it bucked and twisted like a living earthquake. The crowd went utterly wild. Her beast circled, a storm of waiting fury looking for its opening. Mara leaned low, her voice a whisper poured directly into the space between the predator's ears. "You've met your match today." It snarled, thrashing harder, but she was anchored, her balance shifting with each violent movement like she was part of it. Her beast lunged one final time, sinking its teeth into the exposed forelimb joint with ultimate finality. The two predators crashed to the floor in a cataclysmic tangle of limbs, Mara leaping clear at the very last second. The golden-eyed creature clamped down with everything it had, dragging Voro's limb out and down, a move of pure primal dominance. Voro Prime roared, twisting in a final, desperate attempt to free itself. But Mara was there. Again, her palm pressed to the back of its skull. This time she didn't speak. She simply held. Her silence was a weight heavier than any command. Voro's breathing slowed. Its body stilled, the fight draining out of it. The announcer hesitated, then spoke the words that sealed history. Voro Prime, yield. The tone that followed was decisive. The match was over. Her companion released its ow, grip immediately, stepping back to stand at Mara's side, its chest heaving. She kept her eyes on Voro as it rose. The alien predator looked at her for a long, measuring moment, and then it did the unthinkable. It lowered its head in a gesture that was either instinct or acknowledgement. A unified gasp rippled through the audience. Mara touched her companion's head once, a silent communication passing between them before she turned and walked toward the center of the arena. The crowd erupted, a deafening storm of alien shouts and cheers. Instructors murmured rapidly into comms. In the observation tiers, the command staff exchanged glances heavy with unspoken meaning. Protocols had been shattered, but the results were undeniable. The announcer's mandibles clicked rapidly. Combat assessment complete. Cadet Mara Ashlyn, pass. The words rolled over the amphitheater like a shockwave. The golden-eyed beast fell into step beside her as she moved toward the exit gate. Voro Prime watched them go, its plating settling into a steady, muted color, its massive body still breathing hard. At the edge of the pit, Mara glanced back. She wasn't sure why. Perhaps to see if it was still watching. It was. She met its gaze, gave a short, respectful nod, and stepped through the gate, the roar of the arena chasing her into the dim quiet beyond. In the debriefing chamber, the instructors were waiting, their expressions a mosaic of curiosity, irritation, and something bordering on respect. The reptilian commander tilted his head, his voice a low hiss. Explain how an unregistered apex from Earth was present in your trial. Mara offered a faint, unreadable smile. Unregistered? I submitted all the paperwork. If your systems didn't flag it, that's not my fault. The avian instructor leaned forward, his crest feathers twitching. What species is it? Mara shrugged, a casual, effortless motion. On my world, we just call them hunters. This one's name is Rake. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Then the insectoid from the arena clicked once. That partnership was not random. No, Mara said, her voice soft but iron-strong. It wasn't. She reached down to scratch Rake's head, the beast pressing lightly against her hand in a gesture of pure devotion. You train together long enough. You stop thinking in turns and start thinking in the same moment. The avian's crest feathers lifted slightly, an involuntary sign of deep acknowledgement. Voro Prime has never hesitated before. You made it do so, twice. Mara's smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. It's not always about strength. Sometimes it's about reminding the other predator that they're not the only one at the top. The reptilian's slitted eyes narrowed. And you believe you're at the top? Mara's answer was quiet, but it carried the weight of a galaxy. I believe Rake and I are there. Together. The room held still, absorbing the truth of that statement. Then the insectoid gave a final, sharp click. Cadet Ashlyn, report to your quarters. Further instructions will follow. She turned to leave. Rake falling into step beside her, a shadow and a shield. As the doors hissed shut behind them, she could still feel the electric hum of the arena, could still see the moment Voro Prime had paused, uncertain. It was the look of one apex recognizing another and deciding, for that day at least, not to challenge it. The universe had just learned a new definition of power, and it was born on Earth. This is Wrapped Sci-Fi. Remember the name.